The sun was shining brightly that Saturday morning, casting a warm glow over the quiet little neighborhood where the three siblings lived. The houses were small, built close to one another, with tiny front yards that children often used as playgrounds. It wasn't the kind of place where people drove expensive cars or wore designer clothes, but it was filled with the sound of laughter, kids playing tag, and neighbors greeting each other on porches. Life was simple, sometimes hard, but filled with moments that shaped character. The three siblings Michael, the oldest at 14, Jasmine, 12, and little Aaron, only 9 were used to spending their weekends outdoors. Their mother worked long shifts at a local diner, and their father worked whenever he could find jobs in construction. Money was always tight, but their parents taught them to find joy in the little things. They didn't have expensive toys or the latest gadgets, but they had each other, and that was enough to keep their days filled with laughter and adventure. That morning, after finishing their chores at home, the kids decided to walk to the park. Michael carried a basketball under his arm, while Jasmine held a small notebook she loved to doodle in. Aaron skipped ahead, humming a tune, full of energy and excitement. The three of them often walked that road, which cut through a small wooded area before leading to the open park. They didn't expect the day to be any different from the rest. It was supposed to be just another afternoon of games and fun. But life, as it often does, had a surprise waiting for them. As they rounded a bend in the road, they heard the sound of a car engine revving loudly. It was the kind of deep, heavy sound that made them look at each other in surprise. Cars that passed through their neighborhood were usually old, worn-down sedans or pickup trucks. This sound was different. When they walked a little further, they saw it a shiny black SUV, sleek and huge, the kind of car they had only ever seen on television. The tires were half buried in a patch of thick, wet mud at the side of the road. The more the driver pressed the gas, the deeper the wheels sank. Inside the SUV, they could see a man in a suit gripping the steering wheel tightly. His face looked tense, and his eyes darted around, as if he couldn't believe he was stuck there. The kids stopped for a moment, unsure what to do. It wasn't every day that a stranger in a car like that appeared in their part of town. Michael was the first to speak. "Looks like he's stuck pretty bad," he whispered to his brother and sister. "Those tires aren't going anywhere if he keeps pressing the gas like that." Jasmine tilted her head, observing. "He doesn't look like he belongs here. I wonder why he even took this road." Her tone wasn't judgmental, just curious. It was rare to see wealthy-looking people in their neighborhood, let alone ones driving such a fancy car. Aaron, always eager and bold, tugged on Michael's shirt. "Should we help him? He looks really upset." Michael hesitated. He was only 14, but he carried himself with a seriousness beyond his years. He thought about their parents' lessons, how they were taught to treat people with kindness, no matter who they were. Then he looked at his little brother's hopeful eyes and his sister's quiet nod. He knew the answer. "Yeah," he said finally. "Let's go see if we can do something." The three of them approached the SUV carefully. The man inside noticed them and rolled down the window. His suit jacket looked expensive, his wristwatch even more so. His hair was perfectly styled, though now a little messy from running his hand through it in frustration. He looked at the children with surprise, almost as if he didn't expect anyone to come by. "Hello, sir," Michael said politely. "Looks like your car's stuck." The man sighed, clearly embarrassed. "Yeah. I thought this road would be a shortcut. Big mistake. I've been trying to get it out for 20 minutes, but it just keeps sinking deeper." Jasmine peeked at the tires. "If you keep pressing the gas, it's just going to make it worse," she pointed out gently. The man raised an eyebrow. "You seem to know a lot about this." She shrugged. "Not really. I just watched our dad deal with the truck once. It was the same problem." The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Well, I suppose you're already more helpful than I've been." Michael stepped closer. "We can help push. If you try to drive slowly, we'll push from the back. Maybe it'll get enough traction. The man looked at them in disbelief. You kids want to push this SUV? It's heavier than it looks. Michael smiled. We're stronger than we look. For a moment, the man studied their faces. He seemed touched by their eagerness. Finally, he nodded. All right. Let's give it a try. The kids walked behind the SUV. Michael positioned himself on one side, Jasmine on the other, and Aaron stood in the middle, his small hands pressing firmly against the back. The man shifted the car into gear, and the kids braced themselves. Okay, slowly. Michael called out. The engine growled, the tires spun, and mud splattered onto their clothes. But the siblings dug their feet into the ground, pushing with all their strength. Their sneakers slipped at first, but they didn't give up. They grunted and heaved, their faces straining with effort. Slowly, the SUV began to shift, inch by inch. The tires caught a patch of solid ground, and with one last push, the vehicle lurched forward, finally freeing itself from the mud. The man hit the brakes and turned off the engine. He stepped out of the car, staring in amazement at the three kids covered in mud, panting from their effort but smiling brightly. He laughed, shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe you just did that. Aaron beamed. Told you we're strong. The man looked at them with genuine gratitude. You didn't have to stop. You could have just walked by. Michael shrugged. But you needed help. That's what matters. The billionaire, though the children didn't know yet who he was, pulled out his wallet. At least let me give you something for your trouble. But Jasmine quickly shook her head. We don't need money. We were just helping. The man paused, surprised by the honesty in her voice. He studied them again, then slowly put his wallet back in his pocket. You're remarkable kids. Thank you. Really? They nodded, brushing mud from their clothes. The man got back into his SUV, giving them one last wave before driving off down the road. As the sound of the engine faded, the children looked at each other, laughing at the mess they'd made of their clothes. Mom's gonna be so mad when she sees the mud, Jasmine groaned playfully. Michael grinned. Yeah, but it was worth it. Aaron jumped up and down. We saved a giant car today. That was awesome. They continued on their way to the park, not realizing that this small act of kindness would soon bring about a change in their lives they could never have imagined. The man they had just helped wasn't just anyone, he was a billionaire, and their paths were about to cross again in ways that would change everything for their family life. Next day began like any other in the siblings' home. Their mother had left early for her shift at the diner, and their father was away at a construction site where he had been promised a week of work. Michael, Jasmine, and Aaron were at home finishing their homework before heading outside to play. Life in their household was not easy, but they had learned to find comfort in routine. The memory of helping the stranger with the black SUV still lingered in their minds. Aaron talked about it the most, his excitement bubbling over every time he remembered how the car had finally pulled out of the mud. He told the story 3 times at breakfast until Jasmine rolled her eyes and laughed. Aaron, we were all there. You don't have to keep telling it. But she couldn't help smiling at his enthusiasm. Deep down, she too felt proud of what they had done. Michael, on the other hand, remained thoughtful. He didn't say much about it, but he kept replaying the man's expression in his head, the look of surprise when 3 kids had come to his aid and the gratitude in his eyes as he drove away. By afternoon, they decided to go back outside. The neighborhood streets were familiar, and everyone knew them. They waved at neighbors, kicked a ball with some friends, and later sat on the porch drinking lemonade. But while the day moved on like any other, the man in the black SUV was experiencing something different. After driving away from the children, he had gone home to his mansion on the other side of the city. His name was Mr. Anderson, a man who had built his fortune through years of business ventures and investments. He was known in wealthy circles, but very few in the city's poorer neighborhoods would have recognized him. In his world, people dressed in tailored suits, spoke of money in casual conversations, and lived behind gates that separated them from the struggles of everyday life. When his car had sunk into that patch of mud, Mr. Anderson had felt helpless in a way he hadn't in years. He had expected frustration, maybe even ridicule if someone had walked by and seen him. Instead, 3 children with worn-out sneakers and bright eyes had come forward without hesitation. They hadn't asked who he was or what he could give them. They hadn't demanded anything. They had simply helped. That moment replayed in his mind again and again. At dinner that night, he sat at a long polished table across from his empty chair. His wife had passed away years ago, and his grown children lived in other states, too busy with their own lives to visit often. The silence of the big house had become normal to him, but now it felt heavier. He thought of the siblings' laughter as they had struggled to push the SUV, the determination on their faces even though they were just kids. They reminded him of something he had long forgotten: how simple kindness could be, how pure. In his study later that night, he opened his laptop and began searching. He didn't even know their names, but he remembered the road where they had helped him. With a few phone calls and some inquiries, he learned that the neighborhood was small, close-knit, and it wouldn't take much effort to find the family. He wasn't sure why, but he felt compelled to do so. He wanted to thank them properly, not with money in his hand at the side of the road, but with something that would make a real difference in their lives. Meanwhile, back in the siblings' home, their evening went on quietly. Their mother returned from work exhausted, but she smiled warmly at her children as they greeted her at the door. She listened patiently as Aaron once again told the story of the stuck SUV, this time with even more dramatic details. She laughed, shaking her head. "You 3 and your adventures," she said, kissing each of them on the forehead. To her, it was just another example of how her children were growing up with good hearts. 2 days later, Mr. Anderson found himself driving back toward that same neighborhood. He wasn't in the SUV this time but in a more modest car, hoping to draw less attention. The streets looked different from the ones near his home. The houses were smaller, the roads narrower, and the yards were filled with the voices of children playing. He drove slowly, watching carefully, until he spotted a group of kids shooting hoops near a worn-out basketball court. Among them, he recognized Michael's determined face, the same expression he had seen when the boy had leaned his weight against the SUV. Mr. Anderson parked at the corner and observed for a moment. Michael passed the ball to Aaron, who missed the shot but laughed as his older brother teased him. Jasmine sat nearby under the shade of a tree, sketching in her notebook, her face calm and focused. They were so ordinary, yet something about them stood out: their unity, their energy, their spirit. He got out of the car and approached slowly. At first, none of the kids noticed. But when Michael finally glanced up, his eyes widened. He nudged Aaron and whispered, "That's him." Jasmine looked up too, her notebook falling into her lap. Mr. Anderson smiled warmly. "Hello again," he said. The siblings gathered together, unsure why he had returned. "Hi," Michael replied cautiously. "Is your car stuck again?" The man chuckled. "No, not this time. I just wanted to see you 3. He paused for a moment, then added, "May I speak with your parents?" Michael exchanged a glance with Jasmine. Their mother was at work, and their father wouldn't be home until evening. "Our mom's not here right now," Jasmine explained politely. "That's all right," Mr. Anderson said. "I'll come back another time. But I wanted to thank you again for what you did. I don't think you realize how much it meant to me." Aaron tilted his head curiously. "It was just pushing a car." Mr. Anderson crouched slightly so he was at eye level with the boy. "Sometimes the smallest things mean the most," he said gently. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a small card. "This has my name and number. Please give it to your mother. Tell her I'd like to visit when she's available." The children accepted the card, still uncertain. The name printed on it meant nothing to them, but the weight of his request hung in the air. He gave them another smile before walking back to his car. That evening, when their mother returned from work, Jasmine handed her the card. "A man came today," she explained. "The one with the car. He said he wants to see you." Their mother frowned slightly, reading the name. She had never heard of him either. "Did he say why?" Michael shook his head. "Just that he wanted to thank us." She looked thoughtful but didn't press further. She tucked the card into a drawer, unsure what to make of it. For Mr. Anderson, however, the decision was clear. He had seen enough of the children to know they were special. He didn't just want to say thank you, he wanted to change their future. And so, only a few days later, he would return, not as a man needing help, but as someone ready to give help in return. The following days passed slowly for the three siblings. After receiving the business card from the man whose SUV they had helped, they couldn't stop thinking about him. The card had been tucked away by their mother in a small drawer near the kitchen, but its presence in the house felt unusual, almost like it carried a hidden importance. Michael kept glancing at the drawer whenever he walked past it. Jasmine doodled the image of a shiny SUV in her notebook without realizing it, and Aaron continued to tell the story of that day to anyone who would listen, adding details that made it sound bigger than life. Their mother, though, stayed cautious. She was a kind woman who believed in people's goodness, but years of struggle had taught her to be careful. A stranger, especially one who returned unexpectedly, could mean many things. She didn't want to raise her hopes or let her children expect something that might not come. So, she told them gently, "Maybe he just wanted to thank you again. We'll see what he says if he comes back." Meanwhile, Mr. Anderson found himself unable to shake the memory of the children. At his office, he tried focusing on meetings, reports, and phone calls, but the image of three muddy kids pushing with all their strength filled his mind. In a world where most people measured value in money, these children had shown him something far greater: kindness without expecting anything in return. It stirred something in him that had long been silent, a sense of humility and gratitude. One evening, as he sat by the large windows of his mansion, overlooking the glowing city lights, he thought of his own childhood. He had grown up poor too, in a small town where people knew each other by name. His father had worked long hours in a factory, and his mother had done laundry for neighbors to make ends meet. He remembered the struggles, the empty shelves in the kitchen, the days when he wore the same shoes long after they no longer fit. What carried him through those days were the moments when people showed kindness: a neighbor offering food, a teacher staying late to tutor him, a friend's family inviting him for dinner. Without those small acts, he might never have found the strength to chase his dreams. Now, sitting in his large house surrounded by wealth, he realized how far he had come and how far he had drifted from the boy he once was. The children reminded him of that boy, of the days when life was hard, but hope was alive. He decided he couldn't just let their kindness pass by unnoticed. He wanted to do something that would matter, something that could change their lives as others had once changed his. The next Saturday, Mr. Anderson returned to the neighborhood, this time with a clear plan. He parked the modest car at the corner again and walked toward the siblings' home. He could see the kids on the porch, their laughter carrying into the street. When they noticed him, Aaron jumped up excitedly and pointed. "It's him! He's back!" Jasmine quickly smoothed her hair and closed her notebook, while Michael stood tall, trying to look more responsible. Their mother stepped outside, wiping her hands on a kitchen towel. She looked at the man with cautious eyes but greeted him politely. "You must be the gentleman my children told me about," she said. Mr. Anderson smiled warmly. "Yes, ma'am. My name is Richard Anderson. Your children were kind enough to help me when my car got stuck the other day. I can't tell you how grateful I am." "They told me the story," she replied softly. "I'm glad they could be of help." He hesitated for a moment, then continued, "I was wondering if I might speak with you for a while. I promise I don't mean to intrude." She studied him carefully, then nodded. "All right. Please, come in. Inside the small living room, Mr. Anderson noticed the worn furniture, the peeling wallpaper, and the framed family photos placed carefully on the shelf. The home was modest, but it radiated warmth. The children sat close together on the couch while their mother took a chair nearby. "I won't take much of your time," Mr. Anderson began. "I just wanted to thank your children properly. Most people would have walked by that day, but they didn't. They reminded me of something important, that kindness matters, no matter who you are." He paused, his voice softening. "I've been fortunate in life, and I want to give something back. I'd like to help your family in whatever way I can." Their mother blinked in surprise. "Help us? You don't even know us." "I don't need to," he said gently. "I know enough. I know your children are good, selfless, and strong. That tells me everything I need to know about how they've been raised. Please, let me do something for them. Maybe scholarships for their education, or support for your household. I just want to give back in a meaningful way." The room grew quiet. The children stared wide-eyed at their mother, waiting for her response. Michael's heart pounded in his chest. The idea of someone offering help like that felt unreal, almost like a story from one of the books he read at school. Jasmine bit her lip, wondering if it was possible, and Aaron nearly bounced in his seat from excitement. But their mother remained calm. She looked at Mr. Anderson with steady eyes. "I appreciate your words, sir, and I can see you mean them. But I need to ask why? Why us?" Mr. Anderson leaned back slightly, his expression thoughtful. "Because when I was a boy, people helped me. They didn't have to, but they did. Without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. Your children reminded me of that. They gave me something more valuable than money. They reminded me of who I used to be. And I want to honor that gift by giving them something in return." For a long moment, their mother didn't answer. She thought of the years of hard work, of bills stacked on the kitchen counter, of nights when she prayed her children would have a better future. Part of her wanted to say yes immediately, to accept the chance that had suddenly appeared at her doorstep. But another part of her feared disappointment, feared that it was too good to be true. Finally, she spoke carefully. "If you truly want to help, I won't stand in the way. But I want to be clear, we don't want charity. What we want is opportunity. If you can give my children the chance to study, to grow, to build their own lives, then I will be grateful. That is all I ask." Mr. Anderson's face brightened with respect. "That's exactly what I had in mind. Opportunities, not handouts." The children exchanged glances, their eyes shining with excitement. They didn't know exactly what this man planned to do, but they could feel something incredible was beginning to unfold. That night, after Mr. Anderson left with a promise to return soon, the family sat together in the living room, talking about what had just happened. Aaron was full of ideas. Maybe they would get new bikes, or maybe the man would take them on trips. Jasmine, more practical, thought of how she could finally attend art classes she had always dreamed of. Michael, though, thought of the future college, a career, a life where he could take care of his family. Their mother listened quietly, her heart full. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to hope deeply. Something told her that the knock on their door that day was only the beginning of a new chapter in their lives. The following week felt different in the small household. There was a sense of expectation in the air, as though something important was on the horizon. The siblings went about their normal routines: school, chores, play. But each evening when they gathered around the dinner table, their thoughts returned to the man who had promised to come back. Their mother tried not to show it, but even she was quietly waiting. True to his word, Mr. Anderson returned one evening. This time, he did not come empty-handed. He carried with him a calm confidence and a small folder tucked under his arm. When he knocked on the door, the children rushed to open it, their eyes lighting up with recognition. Their mother welcomed him in, still cautious but warmer than before. They all sat together in the living room once again. Mr. Anderson placed the folder on the table and smiled at the children. "I told you I wanted to do something meaningful," he began. "So, I've been making arrangements. I hope you'll allow me to share them with you." The children leaned forward eagerly, while their mother folded her hands in her lap, listening carefully. "I've spoken with a local private school," Mr. Anderson continued. "It's one of the best in the city. I've arranged for each of you to have full scholarships there, covering tuition, books, uniforms, everything. You'll have access to better teachers, libraries, and opportunities." The children gasped almost in unison. Michael's eyes widened, Jasmine's mouth fell open, and Aaron clapped his hands together before his mother gently reminded him to settle down. "There's more," Mr. Anderson said with a kind smile. "I've also set up a small fund for your household. It's not money just to spend, but support to ease the burden so your parents don't have to worry about bills while you focus on your studies." Their mother's eyes filled with tears. She pressed her lips together, holding back her emotions, before whispering, "Why would you do all this for us?" Mr. Anderson's expression softened. "Because your children reminded me of values I had almost forgotten. Their kindness touched me deeply, and I believe kindness should be repaid with kindness. This isn't just about giving, it's about investing in a future that I believe will be bright." The room was silent for a moment, filled with the weight of his words. Then Aaron, unable to hold back his excitement, blurted out, "Does this mean I get to wear one of those fancy uniforms?" Everyone laughed, the tension breaking, and even their mother smiled through her tears. Over the next days, Mr. Anderson became a frequent visitor. He didn't come as a stranger anymore but as someone who felt like part of the family. He joined them for simple dinners, listened to the children's stories, and asked them about their dreams. Michael spoke of becoming an engineer, Jasmine dreamed of being an artist, and Aaron, still young, changed his answer every day from astronaut to basketball player to teacher. Mr. Anderson listened carefully, nodding, encouraging them to dream even bigger. For the children, it was like a new world opening up. They visited the private school for the first time with Mr. Anderson, their mother walking beside them proudly. The school's tall gates, clean hallways, and wide classrooms felt like something out of a movie. Jasmine's eyes sparkled at the art studio filled with paints and canvases. Michael couldn't stop staring at the science lab, imagining all the experiments he would get to try. Aaron, of course, was most excited about the playground. But it wasn't just about the new school. Mr. Anderson also arranged tutoring sessions to help them catch up where they needed extra help, and he introduced their mother to people who could guide her in managing the household support fund. He wasn't just throwing money at them, he was investing time, care, and thought. One evening, as the family sat on the porch, watching the sunset, Michael turned to his mother. "Do you think he really cares about us? Or is he just doing this because he's rich?" Their mother looked at him gently. "Son, caring doesn't depend on money. It depends on the heart. And I can see that his heart is in the right place. He doesn't have to do any of this. He chooses to. That tells me it's real." Michael nodded slowly, her words sinking in. Deep down, he already felt the truth of them. As the days passed, word spread through the neighborhood. Neighbors began to notice the new uniforms, the children's excitement, and the mysterious man who often visited their home. Some whispered in curiosity, others in admiration. The children, however, remained humble, never bragging about what was happening. They still played in the same streets, laughed with the same friends, and helped their mother with the same chores. Mr. Anderson, too, changed in ways he hadn't expected. For years, he had lived in wealth but also in solitude. Now, sitting at the modest dinner table with the siblings chattering around him, he felt something he hadn't in a long time, a sense of belonging. Their laughter filled the silence that used to echo in his mansion. Their questions reminded him of the curiosity he once had as a boy. Their mother's resilience and quiet strength reminded him of his own mother. One night, as he drove back to his grand house, he realized something remarkable. In trying to give to this family, he was receiving more than he had imagined. He was receiving warmth, joy, and a reminder of what truly mattered. But the journey wasn't without challenges. At the new school, the children faced adjustments. Michael struggled at first to keep up with advanced math. Jasmine felt shy among classmates who came from wealthier backgrounds. Aaron, though cheerful, sometimes felt out of place when other kids talked about vacations or expensive toys. Whenever doubts crept in, Mr. Anderson was there. He encouraged Michael, hired a tutor, and reminded him that intelligence grows with effort. He praised Jasmine's art and told her not to compare herself to anyone else, because her uniqueness was her strength. He hugged Aaron and reminded him that kindness was worth more than toys. Slowly, the children gained confidence. The turning point came when Michael, after weeks of study, proudly brought home his first high grade in math. Jasmine painted a picture that won recognition in the school's art fair. Aaron, with his charm, made new friends who admired him for his cheerful spirit. The family celebrated each success with joy, and Mr. Anderson celebrated with them, clapping the loudest. One evening, after another small celebration at the house, Mr. Anderson stayed behind as the children went to bed. Sitting across from their mother at the kitchen table, he said softly, "You have a wonderful family. They are going to do great things." She looked at him with gratitude. "Thank you. You've given them a chance I never thought possible." He shook his head gently. "They gave me a chance first. A chance to remember what kindness means. I'll never forget that." As he left that night, the family stood by the window, waving goodbye. The bond between them was no longer just one of gratitude, it was becoming something like family itself. And so, what began as a simple act of kindness on a muddy road had grown into a story far greater than any of them could have imagined. The knock on their door had brought change, opportunity, and hope. But more than anything, it had brought hearts together, proving that sometimes the smallest actions lead to the most powerful transformations. Weeks turned into months, and the children's lives began to change in ways they had never imagined. What had started as one small act of kindness on a muddy road now grew into a story of opportunity, hope, and transformation. Each day brought something new. Michael, Jasmine, and Aaron woke up with excitement instead of worry, eager to learn, eager to try, and eager to dream. Michael, once unsure about his future, now walked with confidence. He studied hard, staying late at school to work in the science lab. His teachers began to notice his dedication, often telling his mother that he was destined for something great. Though the challenges were still there, he no longer felt alone. He knew Mr. Anderson believed in him, and that belief gave him strength. Jasmine, with her gentle heart and creative mind, found herself blossoming. She painted whenever she could, using colors to tell stories that words could not. Her art began to speak to others, her classmates, her teachers, even strangers who saw her work in small school exhibitions. For the first time, she felt that her dreams were not impossible. She carried her sketchbook everywhere, filling it with drawings of her family, her neighborhood, and even the day they had pushed the SUV from the mud. And little Aaron, full of laughter and energy, became known in his school as the boy with the biggest heart. He helped classmates, cheered them up when they were sad, and shared whatever he had, no matter how small. He wasn't just making friends, he was spreading the same spirit of kindness that had started everything. Through it all, their mother watched with pride. For years, she had worried about how to give her children a better future. She had prayed for opportunities, and now, they had arrived in the most unexpected way. She worked just as hard as before, but she carried a lighter heart, knowing her children's paths were opening wider than she had ever dreamed. As for Mr. Anderson, his life, too, was no longer the same. His once quiet mansion now felt less lonely. Though he still lived alone, he no longer carried the same emptiness inside. He visited the family often, joining them for dinners, cheering at school events, and sitting on the porch with them as the sun went down. The laughter of the children became music to him, filling the spaces of his heart that had been silent for years. One crisp evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Mr. Anderson arrived carrying a small box. He placed it on the table and smiled at the curious faces around him. "This is for all of you," he said. Michael carefully opened the box to find a set of keys inside. He looked at Mr. Anderson in confusion. "Keys?" Mr. Anderson chuckled softly. "Yes, keys. Not to my car this time, but to something else. I've arranged for your family to move into a new home. It's close to the school, with more space for all of you, and a small studio for Jasmine to paint. It's not a gift to change who you are, it's simply a place where you can grow without worry." Their mother's hand flew to her mouth as tears filled her eyes. She shook her head slightly, overwhelmed. "You've already done so much. We can't accept this." But Mr. Anderson leaned forward, his voice gentle but firm. "Please. This isn't charity. This is me keeping a promise to myself. Years ago, people helped me when I needed it most. They gave me opportunities that changed my life. If they hadn't, I wouldn't be where I am today. I can never repay them, but I can pass it on. That's what I'm doing now. Your children gave me a gift too. They reminded me of humanity, of kindness, of hope. Let me return that gift in the way I know how." The room was quiet, filled with emotion. Finally, their mother nodded slowly, her voice trembling. "Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you." Aaron jumped up and hugged Mr. Anderson tightly. "Does the new house have a backyard? Can we play ball there?" Mr. Anderson laughed, hugging him back. "Yes, Aaron. It has a backyard big enough for all the games you want." The move to the new house happened a few weeks later. The family packed their modest belongings, neighbors helped carry boxes, and children from the street waved goodbye. Though they were sad to leave the place they had always known, they understood this was not just a change of address, it was the beginning of a brighter chapter. The new home was everything Mr. Anderson had promised. Bright rooms, space to study and create, and a quiet backyard where the children could play freely. Jasmine claimed the small studio as her own, filling it with drawings and colors. Michael set up a study corner with books and notes. Aaron ran through the backyard, already imagining soccer games with new friends. Mr. Anderson visited often, but he was careful not to take over their lives. He wanted them to feel proud of their own efforts, not dependent on him. He encouraged them to keep working hard, to remember that every opportunity was also a responsibility. The children took his words to heart, knowing that their journey was just beginning. Months later, during a school event, Michael stood on stage receiving an award for his achievements in science. Jasmine's painting hung proudly in the hallway, admired by many. Aaron, too young for awards yet, sat in the audience cheering louder than anyone else. Their mother sat in the front row, her eyes shining with tears of pride. And sitting beside her was Mr. Anderson, clapping as though these were his own children. As they left the school that evening, Mr. Anderson walked beside them, the cool air filled with laughter. Michael glanced up at him and asked, "Why do you keep helping us, even after all this time?" Mr. Anderson smiled, his eyes warm. "Because you helped me first. You reminded me that no matter how much money or success someone has, what matters most is kindness. That day when you pushed my car out of the mud, you didn't just help me. You changed me. And that is something I'll never forget." The children smiled, their hearts full. They didn't fully understand yet how deeply their small act had impacted his life, but they felt the truth in his words. Years later, people in the community would still tell the story of the 3 children who helped a man in a muddy SUV, and how that moment changed everything. But for the family, it wasn't just a story, it was their life. It was proof that even the smallest act of kindness can create ripples that spread farther than anyone could imagine. And so, the siblings grew up with not just opportunities, but with a deeper lesson. They learned that kindness comes back in unexpected ways. They learned that hope can knock on your door when you least expect it. And they learned that sometimes, helping someone in need can be the beginning of something extraordinary. The story of a billionaire and 3 children became a reminder for everyone around them that true wealth isn't measured in cars or houses or money, but in the ability to touch lives, to give without expecting, and to love without limit. And in that lesson, both the billionaire and the children found something richer than gold, the beauty of a shared humanity.